5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New... Too early.
Hootenanny. Well, it depends when you're listening. It's too early for next year.
Happy New Year. I don't do that at New Year. I don't know why I'm doing it now.
And people are listening in June. Wondering if you've gone balmy.
Oh yeah, I never thought of that. Listening on the old back issues. All right, let's get on with it. Hello and welcome to the Comedy Slab podcast. I'm Shane O'Connor. He's Adrian Lacey, and we'll give you a brief indication of what you're going to hear over the next 45 minutes. Actually,
it'll seem long.
Who knows? I don't know why I'm pretending. Yeah, apart from the fact that it will seem a lot longer. Each week we choose a comedy programme to have a watch or a listen to, and we have a chat about it, tell you the bits that we like, the bits that we weren't so lovely and keen on, and we'll play you a couple of clips between now and the end of the podcast to give you a bit of a flavour of what we've been listening to, and we'll give it a mark just for our own amusement, really. There are no right or wrong answers, just as long as you show you're working out in the margin on the left-hand side. But before we go into that, we normally have a bit of comedy news, don't we, around this neck of the woods?
Yeah.
And I thought, well, actually, because this is going to be the last one of 2020, we thought it would be nice to have a quick squint back of the... How many were there, do you know? How many we did? It'd been one a week, wouldn't it? We didn't miss a week, did we?
Approximately 52. I don't think so. Much though we may have wanted, and our listeners may have wanted.
Well, do you know, touch wood when I say that, but I don't think we haven't... Have we ever missed a week? I don't think we have we?
Gosh, not this year. No, don't jinx this show. It might suddenly stall or the power will go. But early on, I got hospitalised in our first year.
Yeah.
In the first weeks, didn't I? You said the lengths you go to get out of the comedy slab, but you insisted on reinstating me. I seriously thought you were going to get a dep, and that was it. You know, one strike and you're out.
No, couldn't have done it without you. So, did you have a squint over the last year then and see what were the... You see, rather than saying what was our favourite and what wasn't our favourite, or what we liked or what we didn't like or whatever, I was going to say maybe we coach it in the terms of more what was the thing that disappointed you most and the thing that kind of encouraged you the most. I don't, rather than just simple, that was good, that was the worst.
Well, yeah, and what that does is take into account expectations, which are all important, aren't they? Because the higher your expectations, the higher the risk of disappointment.
Yeah.
And the temptation of, sorry, my dishwasher's doing its death rattle. You'll always find me in the kitchen at parties and at Comedy Slab recordings. That's got to change in the new year, I hope.
I wouldn't mind, but it's only got a plastic bowl and a plastic spoon. I don't know why you put it in the dishwasher.
So I'm doing the dishwash myself as we speak.
Oh, right.
But I'm nearly finished.
You've only got your feet in it.
So, yes, Alan Partridge is an interesting one because I put it top of the list, but actually he falls possibly into both... What?
We're spending too much time together.
Is that what you've got at the top of your... Is it like nuns all syncing up when they're in the same... No, let's not dwell on that. But, yeah, great minds or very predictable minds thinking alike. But the podcast we both loved, didn't we, this year?
Yeah, and that was the reason I put it at the a highlight, really, I suppose, for the all of the ones that we watched and listened to this year was because of that. It was because we were so... I think we were both so deflated and dejected by the one show rip-off thing that he did, which interestingly scored a second series. I mean, we're still waiting for that to come out, aren't we, as we speak? So there will be a... Give me a second series. There will be a second series of that one.
He got his dream, whether or not he needed to go to the Foxtrot restaurant and get the commissioner to smell his cheese.
Who knows?
History doesn't tell yet.
No.
Maybe it will one day.
But, I mean, having said that, it was a beautifully crafted piece of work, wasn't it? And
crisp writing. But the funny thing is, as we remarked at the time when we slabbed it this year, it's the same writers.
Yeah.
So they've gone, I won't say from zero to hero, but they're certainly heroes of this year. That writing partnership, it is so crisp and on the money time after time.
One of the things, actually talking about writing, one of the things that I'm beginning to understand and has really sort of invaded my consciousness since doing the Comedy Slab is a greater understanding of comedy writing and the fact that I watched. I said to you, I sit just before he goes to bed. My son likes to watch a little bit of The Last of the Summer Wine, and some of the writing in that isn't the best in the world. And you kind of think, how can the writer of that produce something as brilliant and as energetically funny as Open All Hours, for example, Roy Clark, and because he's writing for a different audience and in a different context and in a different way and a different skill. And I think there is that to writing, isn't there? Is that, sometimes you kind of think, actually, no, it's written like that for that, and it's not that he can't write funny, because he quite clearly can with other stuff that he's done, but he's writing in a different mode.
I mean, I think, I was just chewing over as you said that how much difference a performer makes. Of course, to get everything, to have a really good show, you've got to get everything right. TV has to worry even more because of the added gimmick, the pictures, but you've still got to get the performance right, even if the writing's good. I think a good performer can lift relatively mediocre writing, but they can't lift totally off writing. But a good performer won't be paired with someone who is not top of their game, but we all have off days.
Come on, let's see if we can do 2 out of 2. What have you got for your biggest disappointment of the year?
I've got 3.
Oh, I whittled it down to 2. That's weird, isn't it? We both had 1 for. Yeah, go on. What have you got for?
No, I've got another 3 good ones as well, but we'll come back to those. Out of the 3? What do I think is the most disappointment? Parks and Recreation. I had seen years ago. My memory of it was much more flattering than what I made of it this time around this year when we slabbed it earlier in the year. And of course, all this archive, if you didn't say previously, remains available as long as we keep paying the bills. But that wasn't the case for you, was it? I mean, you set that homework, so I think you liked it more than me. Yeah,
I'd kind of, in the same way that I built a soft spot for The American Office, I built a soft spot for Parks and Recreation. I think they come out of very much the same stable. And for me, I didn't have a problem with it. The 2 I chose for greatest disappointment were Dead Ringers. Again, similar kind of thing to you're saying there, is that my recollection of it was greater than the reality of what we listened to on the particular episode. Could have been just an episode that didn't gel with me. Who knows? And the other one was Spitting Image, of course, which was much heralded, and it was back, and it was going to be bolder and brasher and brighter and funnier and all the rest of it. And it was a failure to launch for me, really. In fact, I don't think either of us were particularly enamoured with the return of Spitting Image, were we?
No, perhaps I wasn't quite as disappointed as you. I'm trying to recall, but that's kind of cheating, isn't it? I hadn't put that in my list. But
you gave it a 3, and I gave it a 1.5.
Right. I see. Affection runs deep, really, and what I don't know. It's a funny thing, isn't it? It's almost like a tribal loyalty sometimes, and almost that wish for it to be better. You almost convince yourself you enjoyed it more than you did. It's a funny one. My other 2 disappointments, Derry Girls and Pete versus Life, both very different things. Derry Girls, I think, was measured against the word of mouth praise. Oh, you must watch Derry Girls. It's the funniest thing out, blah, blah, blah. There were lots of good things about it, but and maybe this is a good exercise generally, because you might quote to me. You'll probably scroll up and find my score. My score probably wasn't terrible, and I probably cut it some slack that if I gave it another go or another edition of the show, I might have liked it more. But it was just busy, and my recollection is it didn't quite click. Pete versus Life, that was purely, there'd been no word of mouth, no nothing. It came cold to me, as it were, from you, but not entirely cold, because you sold it. Or rather, I like the title. The thing is, I had a feature once, or is it in my back pocket to want to have a feature called Lacey versus Life? which I think is a better title. You could say I'm biased, but it's got alliteration, 2 L's, Lacey versus Life. Pete versus Life sounded great. You told me the formula, and, sports commentators commentating on someone's life. I think as a premise, that had such promise, if you will, a premise with promise. But in the end, the premises promised didn't deliver. Okay,
I always thought you should do a feature on underwear and call it Lacy Panties, but I don't know. I don't know whether. I'm not sure that's got quite the same potential. But if that's your fantasy, Shane, who am I around Christmas time into the new year to spoil it for you? What about a feature on window draperage, and it could be called Lacy Curtains?
I saw where that was going. I think that's curtains for that particular stub, cul-de-sac of comedy. Once again, demonstrating the quality not of our writing. Were there any other confessions you want? Oh, I was going to give the other good ones. I know you didn't like it and probably don't like it anymore with hindsight, but Chewing Gum with Michaela Cole, I thought was lovely. I then went to see her serious drama, very heavy. It will never be on the Slab because it's not a comedy. It's got some, at best, dark comedic moments, but I May Destroy You, which I found a tough watch and not sure whether it worked in its own terms. But anyway, I won't dwell on that. That's drama, not comedy. The Goes Wrong show, people might remember, in the year of COVID, I was trying to find a way of not touching my face. I had tears running down my cheeks. I had to develop my own medically dubious method of damping my tears. And Sally Forever with the wonderful, I nearly said Sally, Julia Davis.
Can I just say, just in case you're the creators or actors of any of these programs, don't get too excited. He's only watched one episode of all of them, but...
Well, I may surprise you occasionally and watch... I don't know, 2 or listen to 2.
Okay, come on, let's get on. Should we get on with the podcast?
Yeah, before I feel the weight of this year's expectations and the hatred of all the people who didn't get into our top 3.
Or should I say, dung 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 dung. Because on the Slab this week. All right, don't overegg it. On the Slab.
Sorry, I went all Des O'Connor.
We'll have to pay the royalties on that one if you carry on. On the Slab this week, Seinfeld, which I can't remember. I don't think you have. I've never watched an episode of Seinfeld. Have you?
I think I'd seen 1.
Okay.
Or yeah. But that might as well be none, considering how many, they made over 150 shows. What was it, 9 series?
9 series, yeah, mad, isn't it, really? And the rating, we'll talk about the ratings in a bit, but my word, I think if you haven't watched it, you are in the minority, mate, on this little planet we call Earth. Before we do anything else, should we whiz into a clip?
Whiz away.
Because whiz away, because if we do that, then we can get your headline and we can get a feel for whether it tickled you or not. So, first clip from Seinfeld. I was going to say if you've never seen it before, but we hadn't seen it before, so let's just go in just as I saw it. This is how I saw the clip. Knowing what I know, so you probably know a lot more or not about Seinfeld, about the series, about what the concept and setup of it is, but we'll come back to that in a second. Jerry Seinfeld, the main character, he's telling George Costanza, his friend, that he's on his new girlfriend Valerie's speed dial.
So you're on the speed dial?
After 2 dates.
What number?
7.
Well, it's a pain to change that. You gotta lift up that plastic thing with a pen.
Oh, hey, buddy. Hey. Sorry if I keep these here for a while. I'm having a New Year's Eve party.
You're gonna keep these here for 8 months?
Oh, Jerry. It's New Year's Eve, 1999. The millennium. I told you about that.
Wait, but you're gonna leave these chairs here for 2.5 years?
You're not gonna see them. I got a case of party poppers I'm gonna keep in front of them.
Hey, so get this. I got a call this morning from one of the Mets front office guys. They want to take me out to lunch.
What for?
I'm on a winning ball club, Jerry. They probably want to pick my brain.
Really, why do you think they're taking you out to lunch?
I have no idea.
All right, I have had it with those Mayans.
I don't mind the Mayans.
You know that great store, Punamayo. I was trying to buy these hirachis, right? And the saleswoman just completely ignored me.
Are we talking hirachis? I know a great store for hirachis.
No, not Punamayo.
No, Cinco de Mayo. Yeah, Marcelino, he turned me on to it. And he's 164th Mayan.
You know, I'm starting to get a little nervous about this lunch.
What'd you have?
Should I even dare ask you what hirachis are?
I haven't got the shoes, aren't they?
Clothing,
That's
isn't
all.
it?
I mean, is that
Mayan shoes, I'm assuming. Or clothing, yeah. Right, and you didn't say, but Jerry Seinfeld is, in real life, a comedian. I don't know if he's actively still comedianizing.
I think he
but,
is, yeah.
Certainly around that time, right. Oh, good if he is. Because this is, it's about the millennium, but it's pre-millennial by 2.5 years, 1997 vintage. And so it's built around him and not really his act, because we don't see him perform, certainly in that episode. I suppose earlier series may be different.
Well,
remind me.
I think every episode used to start off with him doing stand-up.
Right, and it intercut, did it? Or?
And I don't quite know why that one doesn't, but that one that one doesn't, and I'm not really quite sure why.
Right, well, because you could watch the entire show and not almost know. Oh, there's very vague references, but subtle references to his comedy, but you wouldn't really get that he was a working stand-up comic.
Not from that one. No. And the reason I chose that episode, or if you haven't figured out what I've done yet, when you listen to this, is because this is our New Year's episode, and this is entitled Millennium.
I eventually worked that out. Yeah, because I'm all there.
That's it. Well, look how long it took me to get Ideal. I don't really want to talk about it.
I don't stop about it. You always want to talk about it. Anyway, I haven't given you a headline, but I've got a problem in that. Maybe a nice problem. Thank goodness. We haven't said this for a while, but we always try to listen to, if it's a podcast or a radio show or other audio, or watch whatever is on the Slab, not once but twice. First time we try to be like normal people, who we imagine might be listening to the show, but that's a bit dubious.
It's all order, that one, I tell you.
Exactly, yeah. So the first time I might have had, as a headline to sum up my feelings about the show, Seinfeld, please ignore this sign. See what I did there?
Yeah.
Now I'm not there yet, but I'm moving towards Seinfeld of Dreams.
Yeah, okay.
Neither's a particularly convincing headline. I am ambivalent about it, but you can't pretend it wasn't there for 9 series and wasn't a massive hit. You said you were going to mention ratings. I mean, I'd look a fool to completely dismiss it. So I do feel a bit hemmed in by that, if I'm honest.
What, you feel like you've got to like it because so many people like it?
I do feel a bit of that pressure. I mean, it is for me, in the not very good sense, just too American. The too glitzy, too smart ass, too choppy, too much sounding like, I don't know for a fact, but it sounds like a dubbed audience, canned laughter and all of that.
It isn't. I'll tell you about that in a minute if you want.
Right. Okay. But that's too polished then. Yeah.
But you're right. It does sound like that, and that's the problem, isn't it? If it's no good, it doesn't matter whether it is or it isn't. If it sounds like that, that's not good, is it?
Doesn't feel real.
76 million people watched the finale of season 9.
That's not bad as a fraction of 300 million people in the nation.
And as a regular, if you watch their figures throughout the series, I think they rarely drop below 30 million. By about series 4, I think 4 was about where it kind of started to invade the consciousness of the Americans. But 30 million week in, week out when it was on, and 76 million for the finale, which is just phenomenal, isn't it? Really, when you think,
we'd settle for that as downloads, wouldn't we? I mean, we're on the way there.
Be quite nice, wouldn't it? Yeah. I'm not sure exactly where we are on the path to that, but
how deluded are we?
And we'll have to start counting, won't we, when we've finished this? It does rush at you, though, doesn't it? This as well. I mean, you were saying about choppy. I mean, from what I was reading in interviews that I'd seen, this kind of set a new standard for American comedy, in as much as instead of having, I don't know, about 15 scenes in a show, they had 30 to 40.
Yeah, I did think at one point, because we had the our favourite musical interlude, bow, 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 and then I remember noting, I mean, it'll do your head in if it starts gnawing at you at all. And I mean, the whole show is very much of its time, but that funky bass sound, the slap bass, or bass slap, the professional bassists amongst us will know which way round I should be saying that.
Well, it's a keyboard, actually, but yeah.
Right, it started out as a bass many years ago, before it got distorted.
Yeah,
possibly.
for it was one note that got wrapped around.
Anyway, I was going to say, sorry. Yeah, 1 second that jingle's on, and then there appears to be a sentence or two, and then before you know it, I'm hearing that really annoying bow, 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 bow again. So yeah, that's getting for EastEnders length of scene, which was unusual, as you say, at the time for sitcom.
Well, I timed one of them. I timed one of the scenes just to see, because your mind plays tricks, doesn't it?
Mine particularly.
And there's a scene where he finally gets to number one on the speed dial, the thing that he was talking about there, and I timed that, and it was dead on 30 seconds.
That's the length of your average commercial, isn't it?
I mean, that is incredible, isn't it? And you've got all these strands, and I don't know how many story strands there were, probably 4 or 5. That
was impressive, yeah. I mean, it was, so, well, we can try and remember some of them. The speed dial's interesting. We'll talk about technology, I think, in a moment. Then there's the Mayan thing, the shop, and the harachis. Then there's the, what's his face? Sorry, I have to get my head around the characters. George losing his job or trying to. And then there's the planning for the Millennium Party. Yeah, that's pretty impressive if you can juggle all these things at once. It's whether you think there's too much juggling going on and whether the juggler actually loses it in the end and drops them all.
Well, how did you find that? That's a good place to start, because I got to say, other than the fact that I noticed it, I didn't find it a problem. I'm not sure if I hadn't have been watching it with a critical eye that I would have probably noticed it. But to me, they got away with it. Did it work for you or not?
Yeah, I think that bit was. This is where I'm torn, because the word slick can be a compliment and it could also be a slight barbed insult. That bit was slick, it probably in the good way for me. It just, like an engine that was beautifully oiled, revving nicely, not making too much of a racket, not backfiring. So structurally that worked, and I'm pretty sure that would have been team writing. I mean, that's been the way in the States for years, hasn't it?
Eventually, it's written by Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld.
Right.
What happens is that they get writers in, and they pitch stories to Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld. And they
get paid only if they're used.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. They would, but they'd say, right, okay, and then they go, well, okay, we like that idea, write that one, or have you written it, whatever. So Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld would then have the script for about 3 days, and from page one rewrite the whole thing. But the writer would still get the credit,
right? But
they would rewrite the whole. When I say rewrite it, I mean tweak it, change it.
Do you mean the pitch is not subplots? The pitch is the whole edition.
Script. Yeah.
Or their, yeah.
They write the script, and then Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld would rewrite it. And you said you wouldn't see them. They wouldn't let anyone in the room for 3 days. They'd just be like the two of them would just be there.
I bet their work ethic was to die for.
And they come out. But they said, like Larry David, because I'm a big fan of Larry David, and I'm a big fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm, which was because George Costanza in Seinfeld is based on Larry David.
Oh, that's interesting. Is that how Larry sees himself? I want to assume that.
Yeah, well,
or, all the things, an enlarged comedic version of himself.
All the things that George did, Larry invariably did in real life. But yeah, so that's basically how they did it, and that's how they wrote it. So, ultimate control, I suppose, isn't it? Really, which is unusual, because you expect, as you say, a room full of writers, and that's the American way. But again, they change things with Seinfeld.
Before I forget, the production credits: Shapiro West Productions in association with Castle Rock Entertainment. Now, I know you can't look up Companies House for American companies as you would for UK production companies. Is Seinfeld in there somewhere? And Larry David? Because I know he's exec producer, Jerry Seinfeld, or at least one of them, isn't he?
To be honest with you, I mean, because through the whole series, it was a Giggling Goose, Fred Barron Productions, West Shapiro Productions, Castle Rock Entertainment, all for NBC. So and I thought, oh, where do you even start with that? And I ran out of time. But so I don't really. I'm not sure they had that kind of control through the production company, but they were executive producers, which in the States kind of means they have money and big rewards tied up in that, don't they?
Very big rewards if you have a hit show in the States.
Here's the thing that you don't often get, and I don't know whether you picked up on this as well. And again, seeing it for the first time, I got the distinct impression that the four of them, that's it, and I'll use the character names. In fact, I can't use the character names because I forget Julia Louis-Dreyfus character. But there's Kramer, Seinfeld, Costanza, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
She's Elaine. Is it Benes or Benes? Berg?
Yeah, Elaine is Seinfeld.
Elaine, anyway.
Elaine is Seinfeld's ex-girlfriend, isn't she?
Right, okay, this is where I don't really know the back plot, but other listeners may do.
But the four of them, I got the impression, I don't know about you, but in real life I'm talking about now, I got the impression that the four of them really got on. There's a chemistry there.
Well, it's like the old, it was an American president who said, sincerity is what you need. If you can fake that, you can fake everything, or words to that effect. Can't actors fake a chemistry?
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, maybe they were. Did you not pick that up then? Did you not think?
I didn't, but I mean, they are central characters. They're like the Beatles at the core of the show, aren't they? So writers have some control over who appears when. So you can only assume, I'm not going to write someone in who I don't really get on with as a chief character. So hopefully. I've been looking collectively as comedy slabbers. We've been, or comedy slobs. We've been looking at all these structure more than we have. And also, away from the slab, I'm doing some writing and looking at archetypes, and they're all there, aren't they? That shapeshifter would be that probably the Cosmo Kramer character, because he puts on dark glasses and goes into that shop we were talking about, the Mayan shop, and tries to make out he's a Rockefeller type billionaire. So I'm impressed. I come back to the word slick. I'm impressed at one level by the slickness, but that's also its downfall. It's too slick, in other words. It doesn't feel it's been allowed to breathe enough. I would have preferred, we're getting version 10 after they've been locked in that room for 3 days. I would have preferred version 2 or 3, maybe. It would have been bit looser, bit rawer, if there's such a word.
I think, again, because they're breaking ground, because they're putting so many scenes in an episode, the other thing that they did, which nobody else did, was they were putting in variances of scenes. So they were putting in where they're all sat in the car and it's green screen and they're driving along. People just, at the time, from what I was reading, sitcoms, they just didn't bother to do things like that. They'd go out and they'd film scenes outside on location. There's none in this particular episode. But
I would say that's more bother myself.
Yeah.
Being involved.
Well, they went to a lot of lengths to do variances in the scenes, but because of that, what they ended up doing a lot of the time was almost like filming it in front of a studio audience. And so what?
Well, I was just thinking that's the advantage of doing green screen, the backdrop, that you could have laughs in real time and the actors could respond to those and wait for those.
And I think that's why it's ended up sounding like it's got a laughter track on it, which is never great for anybody, is it, in comedy? Because
sorry, how are you getting from that to say why that would sound like a laughter track?
Because
I'm missing the link.
Because then what they're actually doing then is they're not doing, if you imagine they do The Good Life and they record it in its entirety, almost like watching a play.
Do it in story order.
Yeah, so there was this kind of like from what I can gather, there was this disjointed sort of screening of parts of things. Some things hadn't been done, and some things were going to be done. And
I'm sorry, I'm with you now. Yeah. I think the classic British way, it's got something to commend it on that.
And so they recorded the audience reaction, and then that's quite high up in the mix as well, isn't it? Then, so you kind of, and they're being encouraged to, be enthusiastic about their involvement in it.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld used to warm up the audience as well.
Oh, right. Well, coming back to Blackadder, Richard Curtis used to do warm-ups, and then, I mean, it's a rare thing for a comedian. Ben Elton did his own warm-up for a Ben Elton show, which kind of makes sense. But that doesn't surprise me. But I wonder if he did that for all 9 series, or whether he got to the point of superstardom and thought it wasn't worth the candle. I'm not sure. We must have our second audio clip.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And say to me, friends, after this. Not that you think I'm one of yours, but how that was recorded and to do with the audience. But yeah, if you get us onto our second clip, then.
All right. We're at Jerry's flat, which we are a lot of the time, actually, for all the effort that they make in terms of scenes and moving them about. We did spend an awful lot of time at Jerry's flat. Well, it felt like it anyway. I quite like the way they did this. We'll explain more a little bit after. If you listen to the audio, and then we can talk about the visuals maybe afterwards. Jerry gets a call from his new girlfriend Valerie, and because of the technology and the fact that they've got it's not call waiting. What would you call it? It's like a party line, is it, or something? What would they call it in the UK? I don't really know what.
Gosh, yeah. Well, it's called hold, isn't it? Where you hold one and flip to the other one.
God, we never had a phone until I was 35. Never mind, one with 2 lines on it. But anyway, whatever. So Jerry gets a call from his new girlfriend, Valerie, and her stepmother.
Hello?
Jerry, I was just at my stepmom's house and I saw that you were on her speed dial.
Well, she probably just want to be able to keep tabs on you. Hold on a second. Hello?
Hi, Jerome.
Oh, Mrs. Hamilton, this is a very bad time. I've got Valerie on the other line. Just a second. Hello?
That's her on the other line, isn't it?
Well...
Tell her I don't want you on her speed dial.
Hang on. She knows about the speed dial. Mrs. Hamilton, you gotta get me off this thing.
I won't until she puts me back on hers.
Hang on. She wants to be back on yours.
Fine, but only if you're off hers.
Hang on. Fine, if I'm off yours.
No, still me.
Sorry, hang on. Fine, if I'm off yours.
I won't do it. It's my speed dial and I don't trust her.
Please, Mrs. Hamilton, this is very awkward for me.
All right. I'll hide you in one of the emergency buttons.
Great, bye. She said she'll do it.
Great.
You want to talk about how this was shot? That was probably cutting edge for its day, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it was like a sliding split screen thing they did, wasn't it? Where they were kind of sliding. He was there, and then they were sliding in the next, so it was sliding backwards and forwards. I quite like that. I thought it was quite well done, well executed.
Yeah, and that lovely bump in the road where he thinks he's gone back
Yes.
to Mrs. Hamilton, and he hasn't. And that's very crisp, and that's where slickness is a plus point. It's a very white show, which is, I mean, that just kind of reflects how divided America was then and still is. I mean, Bill Cosby's fallen from grace rather spectacularly, to say the least. But it's the idea of mixing white and non-white characters. They were just about allowed to have references to Mayan culture, but that's about as non-white as it got. Although I read that Seinfeld is a bit of a germophobe, or is Germanophobe. You know, it doesn't like Germans, not Germ.
Is it? The character is.
That's what it said in Madam Wikipedia.
Oh, right.
Can I just do that Friends thing very quickly, which is that I heard that Friends, at the height of its popularity, was shown to more than one audience, and they picked the biggest laughs or the best performances. So they'd perform it, I heard, in front of, 3 audiences. Whether it was all on the same night, probably not. But, I mean, that's going some, isn't it? I'm not sure that's the best use of resources and money, but hey.
It is just to get the best laughter out of it, really. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So, and that's, but it's not necessarily to do with the audience so much as to do with how it's going down for the performance.
When I was just listening quite keenly to that clip, then, and I do wonder whether it was enhanced.
I'm absolutely sure from my experience in sound. Shall we say, tidying up?
Yeah.
Yes.
Which, again, I mean, this was one of the things that was an American audience were acclimatized to, and it was something that British audiences got used to, or maybe still haven't. But in America, it was second nature. It wasn't something that they would even pick up on, is it? Really?
No, I don't think so, because they had got, I don't know what the percentage is, but so many shows had canned laughter for years. I mean, that's just economics, isn't it? It costs more to have an audience in, and you've got to worry about ticketing and all of that. Well, I was going to say, it's funny you should say that, because Curb Your Enthusiasm, to me, is too ragged. And I mean, we've slabbed it, haven't we? And I've got this perennial problem, or rather, I think Larry David has this perennial problem. He doesn't disguise the fact when it's ad-libbing, it's making him laugh.
Yeah.
And I've done the same. I've done spoof podcasts. You mentioned the London podcast, which people can find, by the way, at londonpodcast.net. Thank you for the excuse. And I've laughed, and it's like it's breaking the fourth wall, and it doesn't work. So I confess, I haven't got the performing talent. I tried harder on a second spoof called Going Forward, which I think I was better at. I tried to do it dry, and I did retakes. If I laughed, which I did first time round, I did a retake with me not laughing, because that you've got to be deadpan.
It's difficult though, isn't it, with improv? Because as you say, you don't know what's coming, and that's
when you're working with brilliant improvisers. They I mean, because they're playing for laughs in the audience.
Yeah.
But the trouble is, you're not audience. You're not meant to be. So somewhere between Larry David and Seinfeld, in terms of slickness, that slick scale I could live with and would live with.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what's your score out of 5?
I think my score out of 5.
He's buying time here, folks.
Yeah, would have to be. No, it'd have to be just on the strength of that one that we watched for this episode. There's the strength of the Series 8 episode 20. It'd have to be a 2.5 for me. It'd have to be a 2.5.
Oh, that's funny, because I was going to say first viewing was 2.5. Second viewing, I started looking at and maybe this shouldn't come into it at all. It is the juggernaut thing. I started looking at the sophistication of the plot lines and character after character. Any show after 9 series is going to become quite complex. Like, I used to say to my dad, how did they ever build stations like Paddington or Victoria? And he said, well, they started with one track. Well, which might not be quite true, but hey, it all started with one line once upon a time, didn't it? The Stockton to Settle Railway. That's Series 1, Episode 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
But second viewing, I thought 3 out of 5. So I'm torn, but I'm going to go with 3. So that's 5.5 out of 10, isn't it?
Yeah, I would have thought you would have got more than that. It just shows you, doesn't it, really? I mean, that's before I watched it. I would have thought it would have scored more highly than that, because it is.
Yeah.
Again,
it is that juggernaut.
You know, it's a staple of American comedy, or was for quite a number of years. You know, as you say, it's up there with the Friends and the Everybody Loves Raymond and the Frasers of this world, isn't it? You know.
I'm not sure it's aged well, and that's because we've seen what comedy can do and what it can do without an audience, and so maybe that's a difficult thing. How much do we judge it from today's standards looking back? And the other thing is the technology. When call holding or whatever, call waiting, whatever it's called, speed dial is the height of sophistication. I mean, it should have acknowledged the internet, because it was on a roll by 1997 when this was recorded. But that's interesting. They chose not to go with it. Interesting.
I still haven't got call waiting though now, so I'm hardly want to.
You're waiting for it.
I'm waiting for it. Yeah. I've put a link into if you want to go and have a look. I mean, amazingly, and I have to say, I'll say this more often. It's all, every episode is on all 4, isn't it?
Is it your favourite awful service?
Yeah,
as you call it. It's not that awful, is it?
I wasn't. It's only as a joke, but I mean, I think it is now. It is the UK's largest streaming on demand service.
Wow.
So that's how
no coincidence. It's a freebie.
No, so well done to them. They've got the whole lot, so you can go and watch that for free. I'll put a link in the description if you want to go and have a look at that. Your turn to choose Big Boy.
No, so we've looked back at an episode called, and it's no coincidence, Millennium. So we look back 23 odd years, and I'm going to look forward in the sense, okay, it's not brand new, but, you know, it's new for 2020, and it's a podcast. High time we dissected a podcast. It used to be a time where you could say, I just can't find any comedy podcasts. You could find comedy review podcasts. Welcome to the Slab. But happily, that's really taking off. I'm going to steer you to Kim Noble, that's a gentleman comedian, not to be confused with Russ Noble, who we should put on the Slab another time. It's a podcast called Futile Attempts, in brackets, at Surviving Tomorrow. Don't know how much that's a COVID reference, but this is something quite different. Just as Seinfeld was different for its day, this is something else. Yeah, I don't want to dwell on it. I mean, I was listening on Spotify, which was nice and stress-free, but you will find it in other ways, and not least at Kim Noble's own website. Off the top of my head, it's something like, don't quote me on this, kimnoble.com or kimnoble.co.uk, something like that, something very obvious. So what I'm steering you to is, as far as I know, there's only the one series so far. Could be a second series, but it's episode 2, and the subtitle for that is "We Are Not God."
Okay.
This is just so different, but there is a health warning, there's an age warning and a sensitivity warning. It's very sweary Mary. We'll cut round that next week and we'll try and keep it clean, but it is a sweary Mary show, so not for the kidlets.
Okie dokie. So that's for next week, which will be the first show of 2021. This is
indeed
quite amazing, isn't it? Really, when you say, I don't know why I'm so amazed by that. I've been through the.
I think we have to say amazeballs now.
Oh God!
God!
That's right up there with people saying they're going on their hollybobs. But thankfully, with everything that's been going on, nobody's managed to say that.
And this side of Crimbo, it's fine to use those terms.
Don't forget, if you want to go and have a listen to some of the back issues of the Comedy Slab, you're more than welcome. More than welcome to go and peruse them wherever you fancy. There's a kind of visual sort of version on YouTube. I mean,
don't oversell it.
It's a low effort visual version, isn't it? Let's be honest. But I mean, I have to say, higher than some have managed. So you think, well, fair play.
Yeah.
And don't forget, you can also catch us on Spotify and Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, iTunes, and all the various other platforms as well.
And apart from Shane's glam rock platforms, which we heard about last time, we are on the platform called Twitter. We are at Comedy Slab, naturally enough. That's a bit of fun there. We tweet out things we think you'll be interested in. So do follow us at Comedy Slab. That's also the same handle for our Facebook page, if you could like that. And as always, a person-to-person or Zoom-to-person or Zoom-to-Zoom recommendation, hugely appreciated. Get the word out there if you'd be so kind. Just let's swell the ranks of. I had an odd vision there. Maybe it's listening to Kim Noble too much. But anyway, yes, let's increase our Comedy Slab tribe, and also it would help in the same vein to do that if you could give us a nice, generous star rating on iTunes / Apple Podcasts. Thank you in advance.
Although do be careful. There's nothing worse than when your ranks swell up and you can't reach around and get the cream on. It's just awful. Really, it's terrible. I'd like to finish off this episode. I know we normally have a bit of a giggle and all the rest of it, but on a serious note, I'd like to finish off this episode and just say thank you very much if you. And I know there are some people out there who've patronised us for the whole of the year and probably beyond that as well. If you are one of those people who've stuck with us and have been listening to the Comedy Slab podcast, thank you very much. You can go to bed now, safe in the knowledge. Well, actually, only if it's bedtime. Don't do it at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Not while you're driving.
I meant at the end of the day, you can go to bed safe in the knowledge that you are the people that we do it for and keep us going, and we really are grateful for everything that you've done. So we hope you've had a lovely 2020. Have a lovely 2021. Happy New Year to you guys in particular.
Yeah, big thanks. And did you know the phrase "yada yada yada" came from Seinfeld?